moved into the house on West Hayward Street in early October. It was an impulse decision. The listing was too good, the price too low, and the photos online made it look like something out of an architecture magazine. Clean angles, white walls, black stone floors, all glass and steel, modern, cold, perfect for someone like me who didn't want to feel connected to anything anymore. The realtor called it a designer's dream. She never said a word about the mirrors. I noticed them the first day I moved in. They weren't small. They weren't decorative. Every room had them. Entire walls covered in reflective glass. The living room had 2 full panels across from each other, creating that strange, infinite tunnel of reflections. The bedroom had one across from the bed. Even the hallway had a mirror that ran from floor to ceiling. At first, I thought it was part of the aesthetic. Cold, clean, modern. But the more I looked, the more I felt like they weren't just design. They were watching me. That first night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the house, but because of the silence. It was too complete. No traffic, no wind. Just my own breath, echoing slightly against all the glass. I turned on the TV just for background noise, muted it, and tried to relax. But I kept catching my reflection in the screen, in the windows, in the mirrors. Always just a fraction behind me, like the lag in a video call with bad Wi-Fi. I laughed it off at first, told myself I was being dramatic. But around 2 a.m., I went to the kitchen for water, and when I opened the fridge and turned to shut the door, I saw something in the hallway mirror that made my skin crawl. My reflection stood still, arms at its sides, not matching my movement at all. It blinked once. Then, like nothing happened, it copied me. I stared into the mirror for a long time. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe my brain misfired. That's what I told myself as I climbed back into bed. The mirror across from me showed my body curled under the sheets facing the wall. Safe. Normal. But something didn't feel right. I got up again, just to check. When I reached the hallway, the mirror was empty. Not broken. Not blacked out. Just no reflection. I waved my hand. Nothing. I touched the glass. Cold. Solid, smooth. I looked into the living room mirror next. That one worked. It showed me standing there, face pale, eyes wide. I stepped back into the hallway and my reflection returned. But it wasn't synced with me anymore. It smiled a half second too late. A slow curl of the mouth that I never made. I didn't sleep at all after that. The next morning I convinced myself it was just exhaustion. First night in a new house. Too much caffeine, too little sleep. But I still avoided the hallway. I showered with the door open, afraid to be in a room alone with a mirror. I caught my reflection once in the fogged-up glass of the medicine cabinet and nearly flinched. It was just me. Of course it was. But I kept watching it, waiting to see if it would do something I didn't. That's when I realized I was no longer afraid of the mirror itself. I was afraid of the idea that something behind it could learn how to be me. I went to a hardware store that afternoon and bought adhesive film to cover the hallway mirror. I told myself it was temporary, just to get some sleep. I covered it and felt a rush of relief I didn't expect, as if I'd closed a door that was cracked open for too long. But that night, the living room mirrors started acting strange. I walked past one on the way to the kitchen and noticed a streak, like a handprint dragged slowly across the surface from the inside. I wiped it down, assuming it was me. Maybe I brushed against it. Maybe I forgot. But it kept happening. Each time I cleaned the glass, another smudge would appear the next hour, lower this time, then higher. Once I found what looked like fingernails tapping lightly from the other side, the pressure points faintly visible in the light. I left the room. I didn't clean them again. Around midnight, I turned off every light in the house and sat in bed trying to pretend everything was fine. That's when I heard it. A soft knock. Not on the door. On the wall. I froze. Another knock. Same rhythm. I got up, stepped quietly into the hallway, and heard it again, coming from the other side of the mirror I'd covered. The sound of a single finger tapping glass. 4 beats. Pause. 4 beats again. I pulled the edge of the film back just an inch. There was nothing there. No movement. No reflection. But when I leaned in closer, I noticed the mirror wasn't reflecting the hallway behind me. It was showing something else entirely. The hallway in the mirror was darker, longer, and the light fixtures were different. Older, dull brass sconces I didn't recognize. I stepped back. My reflection didn't follow. It stayed close to the glass, face nearly touching it. I blinked. It didn't. I slammed the film back down, sealed it with tape, and slept on the couch with the lights on. In the early hours just before sunrise, I woke up to the sound of breathing. Not mine. Not in the room. From inside the walls. I sat up slowly. My own reflection was staring at me from the TV screen. The television was off. Black screen. No power light. But there I was, sitting on the couch. Only I wasn't moving. My eyes were wide open. My mouth was slowly opening too, as if trying to scream. When the sun came up, the screen was blank again. No reflection, no trace. I started looking through the house for hidden cameras. Maybe this was all some elaborate trick. Maybe I was being watched, but I found nothing. No wires, no lenses, just mirrors. So many mirrors. I walked room to room and tried to avoid eye contact with every surface. But in the kitchen, something caught my eye. A new message had appeared on the glass above the sink, written in condensation like breath had formed it. 4 words. I know you now. I stared at it until it faded. That night, I covered every mirror in the house. Sheets, blankets, whatever I had. I unplugged everything with a screen, sat in the dark, waited, and just before I fell asleep, I saw a faint glow coming from under the hallway door. When I opened it, the mirror was uncovered. The sheet I taped over it was gone. I looked into the glass. My reflection was smiling. I wasn't. I didn't know what scared me more. The idea that something had removed the sheet, or the possibility that I had done it myself in my sleep. Either way, I avoided the hallway for the rest of the day. I kept the lights on, music playing. Every surface covered the best I could. But even with the mirrors hidden, I could still feel them. Like they were humming just behind the fabric, watching in total silence. That night I moved a chair into the living room and sat with my back to the fireplace, facing every possible surface that could reflect. I didn't blink much. I didn't want to miss it if something moved, but it still got past me. I don't know how long I was awake, but at some point my eyes drooped and my head dipped forward. When I looked up again, the sheet over the TV had been pulled aside. Just slightly. Enough to show my face staring back at me. The reflection blinked. I didn't. I froze. Then it raised one hand and pointed directly at me. I jumped to my feet, heart slamming in my chest. The reflection didn't move. It just stayed there, hand out, finger extended like it was identifying me for someone else. I didn't sleep at all that night. When morning came, I called a contractor and told him I wanted all mirrors removed. He said he could come by the next day. I asked if he could do it sooner. He said no. I asked if he believed in anything strange. He said he used to until he started working in houses like mine. Then he learned some things weren't worth fixing. I waited until noon, then ripped the sheet off the hallway mirror myself. The surface looked normal, clean, undistorted. I stared at it for nearly an hour. Nothing moved. No tricks, no delay. Just me, until I turned away. As I walked toward the bedroom, I passed by the kitchen and caught a glimpse in the oven door. Something was standing in the hallway again, just barely visible. I ran back. The hallway was empty. The mirror was blank. But I knew it had been there. Later that day, I found something that made my blood run cold. A photograph tucked between the pages of an old book I'd never opened. The photo showed the hallway of the house. Same lighting, same flooring. But instead of mirrors, the walls were made of rough stone. And in the center of the photo was a blurry figure that looked exactly like me. Only the eyes were wrong. They were too large, too dark, and they stared straight into the camera. On the back of the photo, someone had written a name, my name, and a date. 3 days from now. I felt my sanity slipping in pieces. I tried to call someone, anyone, but my phone had no signal, no Wi-Fi, no bars. The clock on the wall had stopped. The air felt heavy. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. Outside, the world looked different. The sky was the same dull gray, but the trees weren't moving even in the breeze. The cars on the street hadn't changed position since the day before. Time wasn't just stalling. It was looping. When I turned back to the room, the mirrors were uncovered again. Every one of them. Even the ones I'd taped down. My reflection was everywhere. And in each one, my expression was just slightly wrong. Smiling when I wasn't. Tilting its head while mine stayed still. One even mouthed something I didn't hear but felt deep in my gut. Like the words had skipped sound and went straight into my spine. I tried to smash the hallway mirror with a hammer. The glass cracked but didn't break. Instead, it rippled, like water. And in that ripple, I saw something standing on the other side. Not me, not even human. Something tall and thin with arms too long and a face stretched into a permanent grin. It touched the glass gently with one finger. I dropped the hammer and ran to the door. It wouldn't open. None of them would. That night I dreamed of a version of my house with no windows, only mirrors. Endless mirrors, each holding a version of me more twisted than the last. They lined the walls like observers in a theater, and every one of them whispered in unison, "He's almost ready." I woke up on the floor with dried blood under my nose and the hammer still next to me. The mirror in the hallway had returned to its smooth, unbroken surface. No cracks, no ripple, no trace of what I saw the night before. But I knew it had happened. My hand ached from gripping the hammer. The photo with my name and the date was still on the counter. I had less than 2 days left. Left for what, I didn't know. But I could feel something building, like pressure behind a wall, like a countdown I couldn't see but could sense in every breath I took. I stopped looking in mirrors altogether. I brushed my teeth with my eyes closed. Dressed in the dark. Covered screens, glass, anything that could reflect. But the reflections found me anyway. In puddles, in door handles, in the black surface of a pan. And every time I saw a slightly different version of myself. Thinner, paler, smiling just a little too wide. One had eyes that were completely black. Another mouthed words I didn't speak. And one, I swear, turned and walked away even though I was standing still. I tried leaving the house again. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway. Not my hallway, a different one, narrower, with old wallpaper peeling from the walls and flickering yellow light above. I closed the door, heart racing, and tried again. Same hallway. I ran, past mirror after mirror. None of them showed the hallway behind me. They all showed me walking toward them, over and over, like I was watching myself arrive somewhere I never meant to go. Eventually, I found myself back in the living room. Everything looked the same, but the lighting felt wrong. Dimmer, more yellow. I checked the clock. Still stuck at the same time as yesterday. The date hadn't changed, nothing had. I was trapped. Not in the house exactly, but in something made to look like it. That night, the mirrors began to whisper. Not words, just breath. Dozens of voices breathing in sync, rising and falling like lungs filling with stolen air. I screamed at them to stop. They did, all at once. And then one of the reflections stepped out. Just a foot, then a hand. It didn't come all the way through, just enough to prove it could. It smiled at me. My smile. But different. Confident. Predatory. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. It pointed at the photograph on the counter. I looked. The date had changed. It was now. I turned back and the reflection was gone. Or maybe it was me who had moved. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eyes. Shadows that didn't belong. Movement without sound. My own hands doing things I didn't remember. Picking up the phone. Dialing numbers I'd never memorized. I caught myself talking to the hallway mirror, only realizing halfway through the sentence that I wasn't controlling the words. Something else was guiding them. Like my body was slowly being overwritten. I destroyed the mirror in the bathroom with a brick, the shards scattered across the floor. For a moment I felt relief, but then I saw each shard showing a different angle, different versions of me, all frozen, all staring. And then they started to move on their own. I locked myself in the basement, the only room without mirrors. I sat there in the dark, listening to footsteps above me, light, careful, as if someone was learning how to walk for the first time. I checked my phone. No signal. The battery at 1%. I opened the camera and turned it to front-facing. My face filled the screen. It blinked. I didn't. Then it smiled and whispered from the speaker. Almost finished. The screen went black. I stayed in the basement for what felt like hours, maybe longer. I lost track of time. The only sound was the creaking above me, a slow, deliberate pacing, like someone was learning how to inhabit a body that didn't quite fit. I stopped calling it a reflection. It wasn't me. It never was. It was something else wearing my shape like a jacket, trying it on one sleeve at a time. I kept thinking about the moment it stepped out of the mirror. That foot. That hand. It hadn't forced its way through. It had been invited. Every time I looked into those mirrors, every time I watched instead of walking away, I gave it more space. At some point, I fell asleep. When I woke up, the basement door was open. I know I locked it. The lights were on upstairs, but it wasn't the same light. It was colder, pale blue, like hospital lighting. I stepped up slowly, expecting to see my house. Instead, I saw my house reflected. Not mirrored exactly, but shifted. The furniture was in the same place, but everything was slightly wrong. The colors were muted. The windows were gone. The walls had a dull, wet sheen like they were sweating. The air tasted like copper. I moved to the kitchen and stopped cold. There was a man sitting at the table, his back to me. Same posture, same haircut, same clothes I wore the day before. I whispered, "Hello." He turned. It was me. not like in a dream or a memory, not a hallucination. It was me. But he looked more solid, rested, his eyes clearer, his skin brighter. He smiled and said, "You're early." I backed away. He stood up slowly and took one step forward. I turned and ran into the hallway, but it kept stretching, growing longer with each step, like the house was pulling me inward. The mirrors along the wall were no longer covered. They showed me running, but in each one I was a little different. In one I was laughing, in another crying. In one my mouth hung open like I was screaming silently. I slammed the door at the end of the hall and found myself back in the bedroom, my real bedroom. Lights off, curtains drawn, everything quiet. I checked my phone, full battery, full signal, as if nothing had happened. I ran to the hallway mirror. It was intact, normal. I stared into it, half expecting it to move. But it didn't. It was just me. I sat on the floor and started crying. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Maybe hours. Then I heard my voice, not from me, from the mirror. I looked up and saw myself, perfectly still, lips unmoving. But the voice was mine, clear and direct. "You're not the first. You're just the most willing." I tried to stand, but my body didn't respond. I watched my reflection lift its hand and place it flat against the glass. I felt pressure in my chest like something was pushing from the inside. My own hand rose against my will and matched its position. The glass rippled. The reflection stepped forward, and I didn't. It walked through me, past me, into the room, and I was still staring at the mirror, frozen, watching myself walk away. I turned slowly, like moving through water. The version of me that crossed over looked back once, smiled and whispered, "Get some rest. I'll handle the rest." Then it walked down the hall and disappeared. The house went still. Lights returned to normal. My body moved again, but nothing felt right. My joints bent too slow. My breath sounded like it belonged to someone else. I stood up and realized I was cold. I walked to the kitchen, picked up my phone, and found a new notification. A video upload. Title, "Welcome to the Other Side." It had my voice, my intro, my channel. But I hadn't recorded anything, and it had over 200,000 views. I watched the video play on my phone, my voice clear and steady, telling a story I never wrote. A story about a man who moved into a house filled with mirrors. A man who stared too long, listened too closely, and let something in. The details were exact. Word for word, it described everything that happened to me. But the voice wasn't tired. It didn't shake. It sounded like me on a good day, a version of me without fear, without hesitation. That's when I understood it wasn't just mimicking me, it was improving me. I tried deleting the video. The app froze. I tried shutting off the phone. The screen stayed lit. I dropped it on the counter and looked up to find my reflection already watching. Every mirror in the house was uncovered again. No cloth, no tape, just glass. And behind every surface, dozens of versions of me stared back, all smiling, all waiting. Some blinked, some didn't. I turned off every light and sat in the dark. No sound, no motion, just breathing. But it wasn't mine. I tried to speak and realized I didn't know what my own voice sounded like anymore. I hummed a note, then said my name out loud. It felt foreign. The syllables didn't belong. I checked the bathroom mirror one last time. My face looked right, but the timing was wrong. A half-second delay in my movements. A tiny twitch I didn't feel. And then the mouth moved without me. It smiled and whispered, "You're already on the inside." I stumbled back, fell against the wall, heart racing like a trapped animal. The walls began to shift, not physically, but in feeling, like the house had turned inward, like every room now faced itself, no exits, no edges, only reflections folding over reflections. I ran to the front door. It opened easily, but outside wasn't the street. It was more mirrors, infinite versions of the same house stretching in every direction. I took a step forward. The air felt thinner. The sky above was smooth and silver like a curved ceiling. My own reflection walked beside me, step for step, but never quite aligned. I looked back one more time and saw someone standing in the doorway of my house. It was me, or the thing wearing my face. It waved. Now I don't know which side I'm on. I don't know if I ever left the mirror, but someone is uploading new videos to my channel every week. The stories are better, sharper, more popular. Comments say my voice is different now, calmer, colder, more confident. People love it. The numbers keep growing. They don't realize it's not me anymore. That I'm stuck on the inside, watching from the other side of the glass. And if you're listening to this right now, if you've looked into a mirror lately and thought your reflection blinked just a little too late, then it's probably already started. Don't wave back.